E-Pace has been the biggest selling Jaguar ever, a sign that customers were ready for this old British brand to start selling SUVs. But now it's time for a car that's got even more potential to help the company's turnaround, the E-Pace. And this is our first chance to find out if it's any good. The E-Pace is a smaller crossover than the F-Pace, in effect a sister car for the Range Rover Evoque. It uses that car's chassis, albeit with some subtle tweaks to the suspension geometry, damping and power steering, to give the E-Pace more of a Jaguar feel. It's going on sale with a choice of Ingenium 4-cylinder engines, 2 petrols and 3 diesels, with power outputs from 148 brake horsepower up to the 296 brake horsepower of the P300 model we're testing here. Most E-Paces will be 4-wheel drive, using a system that shares plenty of oily bits with the transmission from the Ford Focus RS. But the most efficient version will be the 148 brake horsepower diesel, which is front-wheel drive. Prices are roughly in line with those of the competition, which includes the Mercedes GLA and GLC, Audi's Q3 and the BMW X1. The cheapest way into the E-Pace is that lean diesel, which starts at less than £29,000. The high-powered HSE we're driving today, though, is fast approaching 50 grand. On the road, the E-Pace definitely feels like one of the more engaging small premium SUVs. The steering has that typically Jaguar springy feel around the straight ahead, but the car's nose is pretty quick to respond to inputs. It stays flat and composed, even during quick direction changes, and if you do throw it at a corner at a silly speed, it just understeers. It's just at the fun side of safe, really. The high-powered petrol engine has plenty of punch, and it's reasonably refined when you're cruising along at speed. Rev it hard, and you don't get a particularly pleasant note though, just a whoosh of induction noise as a reminder that it's a highly tuned 4-cylinder engine. Perhaps the most impressive element of the E-Pace's dynamic makeup is the ride quality. Our HSE car is on 20-inch rims, but there's more compliance than you might reasonably expect, even at low speeds and around town, which is where many of these cars will spend the bulk of their time. Inside the E-Pace, well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. The fit and finish aren't bad, there's the odd bit of double stitching here and some leather, but the overall effect is quite conservative and actually maybe a little bit dull. The infotainment system, well, it's the usual widescreen Jaguar Land Rover affair with their own software. Smartphone integration, that's not really up to much, I'm afraid. No Android Auto, no Apple CarPlay, and that's pretty poor when they're standard on many Super Minis. There are no complaints about the interior packaging though. I'm just over 6 foot tall and almost as wide, and you could fit 4 of me in here quite comfortably for a long journey. The boot's a decent size too, and there are plenty of useful cubby holes dotted around the cabin. The central bin between the front seats is huge. The key question with the E-Pace is whether they've managed to make what is basically a front-wheel drive car, and an SUV at that, feel like enough of a Jaguar. And on that score, I think they've succeeded. Just. It does feel distinct from an Evoque, and it is that little bit more willing and agile in corners than its rivals from Audi, BMW and Mercedes. Now, I don't think a 300 brake horsepower petrol version is necessarily the right way to go, and regardless of engine, some may find the cabin a little bit uninspiring. But if you're wondering whether this car has the potential to be another smash hit for Jaguar, the answer is yes.